All right, ladies and gentlemen, how are y'all doing out there? Welcome back to Iron Kaiser Gaming, and this is the Iron Kaiser. We're trying to do something a little bit different today. Very first live cast for the channel, as we just got some really exciting news, a brand new public update preview coming out for Age of Empires 3. They're calling this the January update. And what I thought would be fun is, instead of me recording the video and doing my normal thing, we would go through it live together. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So, trying this thing out, a little bit of an experiment for me. I hope it's going to be a lot of fun. I've got my chat pulled off to the side, so if any of you have any comments to share as we go through, I look forward to reacting to you guys. But let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, this was posted just a couple of hours ago, although it says 2 hours. Really, publicly facing, it was only about maybe half an hour ago or so. All right, hello explorers. With today's launch of the pup, we're making the first build available for an early hands-on look. Okay, blah, 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 blah. I don't think there's anything we really need to talk about right there. Stability and performance. Fixed an issue with the hero cosmetic rewards not being unlocked for some players. That's good. I really enjoy the hero cosmetics. I think that they're one of the more exciting ways that people are playing with AoE3. With the developers, and investing in the game. So I hope that we see more hero explorer skins. I think they're a lot of fun. I think there's actually more they could be doing with those cosmetics than they are doing. So that's pretty neat. All right, added legacy hotkeys. That's cool. Added new icons. I love that. I always like when they... One thing I really love about AoE3 is the aesthetics. There are elements of AoE3 I absolutely love when it comes to the aesthetics. And I love that they are continually updating the icons and giving them unique flair. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. Okay, nothing else that really catches my eye. This one's cool. The following cards now play a jingle upon arrival. The Marvelous Year for the Spanish, and a brand new card, the British Grenadiers. We'll talk about that in a second. I really enjoy this. I like the little jingles that play with the special cards. I actually think, I don't want to get sidetracked, but if Age of Empires 3 released today, if this were a brand new game, I actually think that there would have been a lot of room for making all of the cards in the deck much more announced. Sort of like you're aware, okay, my opponent has just shipped a card, and it might be, or maybe even my opponent has just shipped the 6 pikeman card, or the 3 villager card, or whatever. Maybe that's giving too much info, but I do like the idea of these cards being really big and important events, and I think that the jingles kind of add to that, so that's pretty neat. Georgian Hussars now speak Georgian. That's really cool. Again, doesn't change the competitive aspect of the game. I know that's what many of you are listening in for, but it is pretty neat nonetheless. Graphics, let's see. Okay, cool. Masterless Samurai now wear a brown robe to be distinguishable from Oroku Ronin. Cool. Upgraded Spies now wear a historical mask. I wonder if that's probably, I'm going to guess, just one spy. But, it would be funny if the historical mask were for different civilizations or something like that. I don't know. Fixed an issue with Jesuit Church skin not always showing up correctly for the Ethiopians. Cool. All right. Now begins the part that you're really here for. The general updates and the civilization updates, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Units and buildings. Artillery takes 3 seconds to embark on ships. Okay. I'm going to guess, I have no idea, but I'm going to guess that there was some sort of cheese with artillery jumping in and out of ships, and they just added that 3-second delay to kind of help deal with that. Walls. This is pretty impressive. Costs increased by an additional 4 wood, up to 10 wood, or up to 10 from 6. Right? So you think about that. It was 6 wood, and they added a 66% increase on top of that. That's more than half of the former cost being added on to go up to 10 wood. So I'm going to guess that probably impacts early game much more than late game. I mean, if you're playing a treaty mode, or you're deep into the post-Imperial Age, or the end game of AoE 3, this probably isn't as big of a deal. It's still a deal. It still hurts. But it means it's going to be much harder to wall up early. Right? So, probably means that it's going to be an even more kinetic game in the early game than it was before. You're going to have to fight with your units. You're not going to be able to hide behind walls as easily in the early game. Hand shock infantry. Fix the omission of removing the cover mode from several units like Tiger Claws and Rattan Shields, all right? Stagger formation, okay, blah, blah, blah. Galleons, this is actually pretty big. Ships that can train units by default are now classified as training ships. I like this move, and you'll see the immediate impact is the next entry. The Culverin inflicts 400 damage against training ship types such as galleons or steamers, down from 700. I will say, as sort of a side note, I think that one of the areas where I'll go ahead and say Age of Empires as a franchise, as a game series, is at its weakest. And especially Age of Empires 3, at its weakest, is in the naval element. Because I think I'm a big Age of Empires 2 guy. If you guys know the channel, you know I like AoE 2. AoE 3, even in AoE 2, I think that the Navy could be a lot better. But at least in AoE 2, you have an interesting rock, paper, scissors element to it. Of the galleons, at least in theory, galleons beat the demo ships, and the demo ships beat the fire ships, and the fire ships beat the galleons. Now, in practice, it may not necessarily work out that way, and I think there's room for more complexity. But there is kind of a basic strategic rock, paper, scissors component. And as best as I'm aware, and I've asked several people, I've gone on several Discord servers and said, hey guys, can you tell me, is there some secret sauce to naval gameplay that makes this interesting? Is there more than just getting out ships? And it seems that the response is, no, it's basically just getting out a number of ships and fighting. So, I'm not wanting to read too much into this, but I do like the idea of saying, all right, all these galleon ships, they belong together, they belong to the same type. That by itself makes the game clearer, easier to understand. That's a big theme for me. I've put out several mods, like the Better Unit Descriptions mod that I've posted on the channel before. That's all about making the game clearer and easier to understand. So I like this by itself, and I kind of hope, I would encourage the devs to go further in really reinvigorating the naval aspect of the game, because I have never really found it that exciting, just from the different types of units. They don't seem to counter each other, and it's just different, whatever. All ships have cannons. They all just do this kind of the same sort of thing to each other. So I like this. Whether or not they do that, I like it. Okay, so the Culverins do less damage against the galleons and the steamers and these types of training ships. And that'll actually be pretty important for, I think it's the Portuguese. I have kind of skimmed through this once before going live here. So, and it does seem like there's a buff there that I'm excited to talk about. Outlaws, adding a class icon to make bonuses against outlaws visible in the stats panel. Let's pause right there. Again, I really like this. Anything that the devs can do to make the game clearer and easier to understand is a win in my book. So a class icon, I think, makes a lot of sense. I like it. Damage bonuses against outlaws get added through the Sheriff and Carabinieri. I don't understand this second entry, because I know that the Sheriff card at least already does that. The Explorer does more damage against outlaws. So I'm not sure if they're saying, well, we're now adding this icon to these two cards, or if they're trying to say additional damage is getting added in. But maybe someone in the chat can maybe add into that. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Woku Ronin, speed increased up to 5 from 4.5. Okay, nice. All right, so just some slight tweaks here. Rate of fire increased. Okay. Artillery damage multiplier increased as well. Tatar Archer's doing a lot better. Mountain Trooper reduced the promotion's benefit by about 33% at levels 2 and 3. Okay. So I guess when you get them to that final elite level, they're not as strong as they were, but I don't think that's too big of a deal. They're still pretty neat units. Sudanese Dervish. Okay, damage, range, and range resistance reduced to 9 from 14. 13 from 14, and 15% from 20%. So 5 less damage, 1 less range, and then 5% less ranged resistance. Oh my goodness. Removed. Oh, this is why. So they're a little bit weaker at the baseline, but they've removed the penalty against attacking infantry, artillery, and villagers. range damage multiplier against heavy infantry has been reduced to 2.5. And the speed has gone up from 2.5. Okay, I think, if I'm understanding the numbers right, that's probably a buff. Because that's a pretty significant nerf. So it was 14 damage you were doing, but then if you were attacking an infantry unit, an artillery, or a villager, that 14 dropped down to 7. So now it's up to 9 if you're attacking those units. So I'm guessing that would probably make the unit less specialized, a better generalist unit, and you're not being punished so much for jumping in on these types of units. Okay, cool. Zapotec, Lightning Warrior. Damage multiplier against heavy infantry reduced to 2.25 from 2.5. Okay. Now, we got some cool things here. First, I love this. Advanced Artillery. This is an H3 card a lot of European civilizations get that unlocks the mortar, and I think it does something else if I'm not mistaken. But off the top of my head, the thing that always jumped out to me, it unlocked the mortar in Age 3. So if you're in an Age 3 fight, you didn't really want to waste the resources to go up to the next age. You're too busy fighting right now, right? But you need some kind of mortar or something. You want to knock down a fort. You want that sort of long-range, devastating anti-infrastructure artillery. You went with the Advanced Artillery. And now, the thing about a card like this, and there's several, and I think we're going to see some other examples in these patch notes. There are cards that sort of unlock potential for your civilization, which is great, but it sort of feels bad that in the moment you don't get anything. You know, that shipment comes in and you just have more potential, but there's nothing on the field, and you kind of find yourself saying, man, I wish I'd shipped, 8 Hussar or whatever, so that I had units on the battlefield ready to go right now. Well, now with the Advanced Artillery, not only do you unlock mortars, but you also send a mortar for free, like alongside everything else. So that's really, really cool. Definitely another nerf, by the way. A big theme here seems to be nerfing, especially early walling. They want to make walling less effective in the early game, I suppose. So we already know that walls cost more. And now, with these technologies, Bastion, Redouts, and City Walls, those techs now slow down wall construction time by an additional 30%. So it used to be, I think it's 40% for Redouts and 50% for Bastion and City Walls. When you bought those techs, they would upgrade the walls that you already have, and then new walls would also have that significantly stronger HP or armor or whatever. They were much harder to get through. So it still does that, but it also slowed down your production of new walls. Now, I mean, wow, that's crazy. It's going up to 80% slower. Wild. So definitely not. If you're a wall fan, this patch hurts. This one stings. Goldener Rite, House of Vetten. This ability now increases cavalry armor by 15%, down from 20%. Okay. Civilization changes. I think this is what most people enjoy the most. Don't you guys think so? That it's the new civs. We like to see the changes to the individual civs. So let's go ahead and dive right in here. Aztecs. In the servers that I'm in, I've seen a lot of conversations about people wanting significant changes to the Aztecs. Reworks, redesigns. A whole, at the very least, an Ottoman level change to the civ. Well, nothing quite like that, but you do get a buff here to one unit in particular, the Arrow Knight. The speed is increasing, going up to 4 from 3.75. And improved damage multipliers against artillery and cavalry going up an additional, 0.25 and 0.15 respectively. So, okay, so that actually, let me back up. Okay, so artillery, you were doing 5 times the damage. Now you're doing 5 times and some change, 5.25 damage. And you did less. You do take reduced damage. You deal reduced damage to cavalry with your Arrow Knight. But it's not as much reduced damage as it was. So definitely a buff for the civilization, a buff for the Arrow Knight. It'll be interesting to see how much that changes their place in the world of AoE3. The British, really exciting change. I think this is one of the big ones here. For the British, they had 2 cards improved grenades and grenade rifles. Grenade rifles basically gave your British Grenadiers additional range, and if I'm not mistaken, they also fired faster. So faster rate of fire, further range. That was the effect of giving them those grenade launchers. My screen here says grenade rifles, but it's actually called grenade launchers. And then improved grenades do increase damage to targets in general, and then especially increase damage to buildings, right? One of those was an H3 card, one of those was an H4 card. They've been removed. They're out of here, and they've been replaced with the brand new card, the British Grenadiers card. This is the one we mentioned earlier. It's going to have a special sound when it's played. So, clearly, because not every card has its own special sound, that would suggest that this is supposed to be a really strong card that's definitely worth, knowing you've got it, right? British Grenadiers is an Age 3 card, so that means that the effect of grenade rifles, which was Age 4, is now being thrown into Age 3. An even earlier power spec for the British here. This card has been added compared to the two previous cards. This card improves Grenadiers in combat by 15%, down from 20%, and building damage by an additional 20%, down from 25%. So, looking at the improved grenades side of things, it is weaker, but I actually think that's a buff because you're getting an Age. Well, that was still an Age 3. You're getting an Age earlier. It's still an Age 3, but you're getting grenade rifles on top of that. If I'm understanding this entry correctly, because they're not just saying grenade rifles are removed and, improved grenades gets a new name. They're not saying that. No, they're saying these two are getting wrapped in together. So you're getting the further range, the faster rate of fire, and the additional damage. All of that in one card. I think that's a buff. Chinese. This is one of those entries that has me really intrigued on some of the edge cases for AoE3. I'll tell you what I mean. The hand mortar added a 6 times damage multiplier against siege units. So let's pause for a second. What is a siege unit? A siege unit is, in most cases, almost every case in the game, not an artillery unit, but these are special units that do siege damage. They're often very good against buildings. Examples would include the Grenadier, the Arsonist, several other units along those lines. I won't list them all. But those are the kinds of units. And the hand mortar already did 6 times damage against artillery. So it's just sort of expanding the scope of units that hand mortars are effective against by allowing them to do so much damage against, again, Grenadiers and Arsonists and the like. What has me intrigued is there are a couple of units in the game, like the Siege Elephant here. All right. If I scroll down, the Siege Elephant is both a siege unit and an artillery unit. So, does that mean, and I don't know the answer to this, again, maybe someone wants to chime in or leave a comment after the stream is done, but does that mean that we're going to have, does that mean that the Chinese mortar is going to do 36 times damage to those users, or maybe it's times 6 and then another times 6, 6 plus 6 kind of deal? What does that mean if the hand mortar goes up against the Siege Elephant? Because it has both of those qualities. Or is it the case where one just overrides the other, and so the hand mortar only does the 6 times damage? I'm not sure about that. Team Hanging Bridges corrected the availability of the card to Age 2 from Age 1, and updated the icon and name to Team Yongle Infrastructure. Yongle was a Chinese emperor. Many of you historical video game fans might recognize him from Civilization 6. No, was he added in? Yes, he was a... See, I enjoy looking at the mods sometimes, so I was making sure he wasn't a modded leader, but I'm pretty sure he was actually added in with one of their last leader patches. I think Yongle was an actual entry. So, anyway, regardless, he was a Chinese emperor. I like these little historical nods. I'm not as sure about Hanging Bridges. I might be missing a reference there to Chinese culture. But I do kind of like that. I like that nod. Yongle Infrastructure. That's cool. Dutch getting a nerf. I do like the icon being updated. The Dutch flag icon was never that exciting, so I'm curious to see what they changed it to. But it improves bank HP by 50% down from 100%. Now, in case you forget, the Dutch East India Company card, it reduces the cost of your banks. It allows your envoys to build banks, which means you no longer need to, waste villager time building them. You can have your envoys do it. And it increased their HP. So it made them decent as even kind of elements of your wall, helping to block off opponents from getting into your base. So sort of fitting into this theme of nerfing walls and making them less effective, this Dutch East India card now only improves the bank HP by half instead of a full 100%. Okay. Belanda Hitam fixed the omission of build limits for Akan and Kobias. The limit is, so I guess it was limitless. Now there's a build limit of 20, but that build limit scales with additional Akan settlements. That seems fair. I've been reading a couple of people complaining about, the Dutch historically did not have, I say historically, I mean historically in AoE3 in the Age of Empires context. The Dutch did not really have musketeers. Like, that was one of their shticks, was their base roster did not have musketeer. But they've since gotten several options. I mean, you have access to blue guards now, and then you have the Akan, and there's a third one that I'm forgetting, but you're able to get quite a few heavy infantry musketeers up and running as the Dutch now. And I think some people were complaining that it was too much. They had too much access for a civ that historically is not really supposed to have access to musketeer. Again, I say historically. I keep meaning historically in a strategic AoE3 sense. I don't mean that in real history the Dutch did not have musketeer, right? But anyway, I think that they're trying to curb the access the Dutch get to the musketeer, which makes sense to me. So, I like it. Ethiopians. The Shotel Warrior. Movement speed. And I've been playing Ethiopia recently. You guys may have seen my most recent prior video where I played the Ethiopians and gave my best shot at some builds that are out there. The Ethiopians are a lot of fun. I don't think enough eyes are on Ethiopia, even though apparently they're not that high in the tier list as far as the pros are concerned. Ethiopia is kind of in a rough spot, so we actually do see some interesting changes here. The Shotel Warrior. This is a shock infantry unit. I really enjoy using them. It's kind of a replacement for a traditional Hussar sort of unit. And they're getting to move even faster. Their movement speed goes up to 6.25 from 6. So it's a little bit easier for them to jump on artillery or jump on vulnerable units or get out of trouble before they get collapsed upon. So I really welcome that change. It makes them a more appealing unit. A new card, Team Habesha Kemis. In Age 2, sends 3 villagers. That is awesome for team games. I think that it might even be a decent card in 1v1. I'm trying to remember what cards they have as far as sending villagers in Age 2. I know that they have the Trinity card that you can send over and over again in Age 1. And it ships 2 villagers and an Aben. Or an Abun. I don't know how you pronounce that. But now you've got a card that sends 3 villagers. That's by itself is nice. But man, if you're playing, let's say a 3v3, I mean, that's 9 villagers in one card. Spread out amongst your allies, but even so. Now this makes me sad because I love teching up with the Jesuits. Well, I guess these actually aren't tech ups. These are cards. But even so, I like having these cards in my deck. The 7 Jesuit allies goes down to 6. The 10 Jesuit allies goes down to 8. And it looks like the influence cost has not changed either. So, that stings. French, Team Tiralieu Sénégalais. Okay, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I do not speak French. Tiralieu Sénégalais. The name has been simplified to Team Senegalese Riflemen, and the icon has been updated. That's going to be easier to say. Now, I love seeing the cultures of different civilizations, whether we're talking about the Aztecs or the Ethiopians or the French, really represented in games. So I really enjoyed when this card came in. I think they originally renamed it to this from something much more generic. Some people didn't like it because it makes it a little bit more complex to say and to remember. But I really like when French culture or, again, British culture or Hausa culture, Inca culture, I like when it gets represented. So I did not really mind this name, but I will admit, it's going to be a lot easier to cast games and talk about Senegalese riflemen than Tiralieu Sénégalais. Again, somebody in the comments correct me on how you pronounce that. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. The Germans, Doppelsoldner. Melee attack range is now visible. I have no idea what this means. Or let me clarify. I'm not sure what this means, but if it is what I hope it is, I'll be very happy. Because I think there's a lot of potential for this. What I'm hoping it means is that when you select the unit, you get a faint outline of how far those attacks are going to hit. Like a little ring around the unit showing you what they're able to hit. That may not be what's being said here. It would not surprise me if... maybe they even mean something as simple as an entry is put into their stats that indicates the attack range. I don't remember if that was already visible or not. But if they meant something like a ring on the ground, I would welcome that heartily, because what that would tell me, that would be the open door into showing visibly the attack range of many other units, maybe even all ranged units. I don't know. But in particular, what I would love to see in the game, I am very frustrated by not being able to tell the range of town centers and town center fire. You know, we can do that in AoE2, for example. You can actually turn on a ring that shows you how far those TCs can fire. And because it's a grid-based game, it's a little bit easier to intuit anyway, even if you have that ring off. But it's much harder to get a feel for that in AoE3, at least in my experience. So I would love to see that brought into the game. And if that's what they were doing here with this one unit, that would be a good little entry into that kind of change. Team Cavalry Attack in H2. The effects no longer stack with the Italian equivalent. Kind of a bug fix there. No big deal. Haudenosaunee. The Eagle Eye abilities. Area of effect reduced to 2 from 3. Tomahawks getting a nerf. Hit points reduced to 145 from 150. That's 5 HP. That's not the biggest thing in the world, but I am going to guess where this will hurt is probably in their rush. The Haudenosaunee have one of the fastest and one of the easiest to pull off early game rushes that are out there. And, you know, at that early stage where you're scrapping with only a handful, 4 or 5 or 6 Tomahawks, and not to mention a couple of Iena or something like that, you know, every bit of HP counts. And so losing 5 here, that might actually make a pretty significant difference to their early game rushes. Speaking of, the Forest Prowler, its train time increases to 36 seconds from 33, so an extra 3 seconds for every single batch of Forest Prowlers. So that means that it's going to be harder to mass up units. I guess that's not as big of a deal in AoE3 because you can queue them up 5 at a time. So it's not 3 per Forest Prowler, but 3 for at least every 5 Forest Prowlers. Still, it's no fun. That hurts. Nerf, nerf, nerf. And then an interesting change. The Ram. Rams can now attack units, inflicting 10 damage, which is not a lot. But they get a 4 times multiplier against artillery, so 40 damage per shot with artillery. Rams continue to prioritize buildings over units, of course. That is a good thing. But that does mean you're sending your Rams forward. I don't know whether you want to proactively engage artillery with the Rams. I'm not sure if that would be such a good idea, but maybe. But what that does mean then is you can get onto those artillery. If you find yourself moving forward, Rams and infantry, and he comes at you with nothing but falconets, just hit those falconets with the Rams, and that should take care of them pretty easily. Or at least scare them off. I don't know. I think the Rams would move faster than the artillery, but it might be a little awkward. It'll at least put some fear in them. So, Hausa. Fodio Tactics. This is a card. I don't play House a lot, but I did do a little bit of research. Fodio Tactics is an H2 card that improves your Fulani archers. Makes them just all around better, but in particular, or at least what's now in particular, their siege. We're going to see how this changes. Fodio Tactics moves to H3. We actually see this card is significantly nerfed. It goes up in age to H3. It goes down in effectiveness. Non-siege range now gets increased by 2, down from 3. So this used to be an H2 card that made your archers shoot 3 units further. Now it only shoots 2 units further after having to research it an age later. So this card is much worse, I think, in a generic context as an all-around upgrade to your archers, not as useful. But siege range now gets increased by 4 instead of 3. So you're doing an even better job of translating your Fulani archers into an anti-infrastructure, anti-building, siege-style unit. And the Fulani archer itself gets a buff going up to 18 range from 17. So I guess in a way, as far as a generic unit, it's sort of it's a buff if you weren't using this card. If you were using this card, it's kind of a wash from that context. But then you're getting 1 range generically, and then another 1 range as far as your siege goes with Photo Tactics. That might make them really scary just from being able to siege a lot of things from much further away. So that's pretty cool. The Inca, the Huaraca. Damage multiplier against infantry now applies only to heavy infantry. So I pulled up my Better Units description mod to figure this one out. Looked up, and sure enough, what the Huaraca used to do, they used to have a bonus against all infantry. If it was an infantry unit, Huaraca did bonus damage. Now it's only against the heavy infantry. So it's limiting the effectiveness of the Huaraca. Their range is going down in Age 3, but up in Age 2. Okay, let me read that again. Range reduced to 21 in Age 3, down from 23. So they're losing 2 range in the 3rd age. But they used to only have 12 range in Age 2. That's gone up to 14. So a nice bonus there for Huaraca. Plumed Spearmen. Cost increased by 10 food to 100 food and 25 wood, from 90 food to 25 wood. What's interesting to me is, to my knowledge, the Inca are not doing that well. I don't see a lot of people play the Inca. I actually want to play around with them some myself, just because they seem like they're fun and not a lot of people are playing them. I know when they first came out, they were sort of advertised as a good civ for AoE2 players to play to get into AoE3. I don't know how true that is. From my playing around, I don't know about that, but I'd like to experiment more with them and maybe get some better understanding. So I didn't think they were doing that well, and so far we're seeing what looks to me like mostly a nerf. So the Huaraca, not as useful, only doing damage to heavy infantry. They are buffed in Age 2, which, if their issue is the early game, they get knocked out too easily early on, and then maybe they're really good in the late game, this change would make sense to me. Kind of tapping down their late game potential, but then increasing what they can do in the Age 2. That makes sense to me. But then Plumed Spearmen getting nerfed as well, costing more resources. Fortunately, you do have those special Inca houses that generate food. So hits to their food eco maybe are not as devastating as they would otherwise be. But still, not that. It's still a nerf. Chimu Runner. Cost and train time increased. 5 food, 5 coin. So now it costs 75 food, 40 coin, up from 70 food, 35 coin. And 3 more seconds. 30 seconds up from 27. Jeez, so far, nerf, nerf, nerf. Jungle Bowman. Poison effect now inflicts 50% less damage against heavy cavalry and hand shock infantry. Nerf. Finally, the Priestess. Hit points reduced to 320 from 360. So the Inca just getting smacked in the face with nerfs. That's interesting. And I wonder, I should go back and maybe ask some people, where were the Inca in the kind of in the tier list and in people's understanding? Because I thought they were sort of toward the bottom of the list, but apparently not. I know that the devs they're not changing things at random. And it's not like they just hate the Inca. So they must have been doing well to justify such nerfs, but I wasn't aware of it. Italians, Roman Tactics. Now also improves units in the Imperial Age by an additional 15%, but the aura's radius has been halved to 17. Now, this is a card I wish I took some notes on, because I remember that Roman Tactics made your archers and your, I think it's your halberdier or your pikemen, made them much stronger. It makes kind of those archaic units significantly better. I'm sorry, no, the Pavisier is not an archaic unit, but makes them. No, I'm sorry, it is an archaic unit. Yeah, yeah. So sorry. Anyway, those archaic units were made a lot stronger, but I don't remember anything about an aura associated with Roman Tactics. I'm going to guess that... I actually have no idea. I'd have to look that up. But... in fact, you know what I could do? Let me check something here real quick. I don't know if you guys can hear this or not, but I actually have the game pulled up. So I'm pulling up the game and pulling up Roman tactics just to see what this deal with the aura is. Let's see. Enables a damage boost when fighting in groups. Okay, so Pikeman, Halberdier, and Pavisier all get improved by this card, and then they have an aura effect when they're fighting together in a group. They're doing even more damage, right? Yeah, it looks like it's boosting damage. So they're getting more HP from the card, and then yeah, and they're getting actually 50% more on top of that. So even more HP, but that area of effect for that damage bonus is smaller. Okay, makes sense. Lakota, the team rum distillery card is added. That's a nice little team bonus there. Japanese, 47 Ronin. Masterless Samurai who now have their brown robes. I'm looking forward to seeing them. I wonder if it's... I don't know why. You know, Samurai, I think of Jedi. I wonder how much like Jedi the Samurai are going to look with their flowing brown robes. You know, that should be interesting. Anyway, Masterless Samurai apparently were not classified as heavy infantry and had their speed reduced to 5.5. So now they are heavy infantry, and that does make sense. Regular Samurai are heavy infantry. You would think the Masterless Samurai should be as well. And their speed has been reduced to 5.5. And I would bet you, let's go over here really quickly, and let's say Samurai. Let's pull up Samurai real quick. Age of Empires 3, and I bet you the movement speed is... Where is movement speed? Oh, come on. Don't tell me that you don't have movement speed. Hit points for this speed. I guess that's right there. 4.5. Okay. I'm surprised. I figured they were equalizing, but actually they still are a little bit faster than regular Samurai, but no longer are they nearly twice as fast as regular Samurai. And I think that makes sense. That's definitely a nerf. Team Orzutsu Mortars in Age 3. Fix an issue with the card, neither affecting damage nor the team as a whole. Wow. Okay, that's a nice fix. Now also grants... Alright, this might be a highlight of the patch. This is one to just... Let's start the fireworks now. Grants Samurai a hand mortar siege attack. Only against buildings. Now, I've got to say, historically, I really like this. I like what they've got here because from a historical point of view, we tend to think in a pop culture sense of samurai. They're always using katana. We think of them in this Age of Empires 2 like context. You know, the honorable knights of Japan who always they use the sword and that's their unit. That's their weapon. When really, samurai used all sorts of weapons. They were not only using katana, they were using spears, they were using bows, and they were very quick to adopt firearms once they reached Japan. So, you know, we would see, if we were to go back in time, we would see samurai with rifles, you know, or muskets, right? And therefore, the idea of these samurai getting a hand mortar that they're bringing with them to the battlefield, I actually really like that from a history point of view. If there was some sort of card that gave the samurai this charged attack where the samurai pulled out a musket and fired off a shot before going into battle with a katana, or a bow, if he fired off a shot from his bow before going into battle, that would be cool. I'm not saying that would be good from a gameplay point of view. I don't know about that. But just from a historical point of view, that would be a really cool thing. So something like that, I really find fun aesthetically. I bet you that this is going to be really strong, though. Because samurai, from what I've read, they were pretty decent at sieging down things already. So this is going to make them a monster where if you get a massive samurai going and your enemy's not ready for that, you're not only killing units with the samurai, you are blowing up buildings left and right now. That's pretty interesting. Of course, they don't give us numbers, but I'm just going to generically say it makes them more effective in siege. Malta, which getting big buffs... only a couple, but I think these are big. One, reduced shipment penalty curve to 1%, down from 2%. So, if I remember right, it had gone up to 2% a couple of patches ago. They're bringing it back down to 1%. So Malta, they receive XP slower than other civilizations. It was a 2% reduction. Now it's only a 1% reduction, which you could either look at that as, wow, you're halving the penalty, or you say, it's whatever, 2%, 1%. Is it really that big a deal? I imagine it does add up a little bit, but I mean, it's not as big a change as increasing the cost of walls by so much, right? New 1 falconet and 1 mortar. This is an Age 3 card that has been added into the game. I love this. I love this. Again, I love the idea of... I'm a big mortar fan. I love playing with mortars, and I love playing with them in Age 3. I don't think the Maltese I'm almost positive they don't get a 2 falconet card. So now they've got a 1 falconet card, which means it's, as far as fighting army versus army, this is still not as effective as the 2 mortar card that most civs get. But then if you do win that fight, you got that extra mortar to help end the game on your Age 3 strength. And I think that is really, really cool. All right. Let's go down here. So, Mexicans. Mexico, a very complex civilization. There's a lot going on because whenever we talk about Mexico, we're not just talking about Mexico, but we're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different revolutions that are all tucked away in this Mexican civilization. The Salteador, it looks like it's getting nerfed. The hit points and speed are being reduced by 5 HP and 0.25 speed. The range has been reduced to 18, but the Vigilantes card upgrade now adds 2 range instead of 1. So I'm guessing it doesn't say here, I'm guessing it's reduced to 18 from 19. So I'm going to guess this sort of equals out after you pick up Vigilantes, but before that, Salteador are weaker. The Plan of Ayutla fixed an issue that resulted in revolutionaries not becoming available after returning from a revolt. Plan of Miramare cost less. That's fun. The Mayan Revolution. Cruzov infantry are also losing range, and they're costing more. The Cult of the Talking Cross. Corrected the tooltip, pointing out the card improves both HP and damage of all hero units and improves treasure rewards. Okay, neat. Nochbeten, 6 fishing boats. Maraya Uikab increases the priestess's strength and capabilities to roughly match a legendary Inca princess, and enables retraining in cathedrals. Okay, that's a nice buff. That's cool. How many people are actually playing with the Maya Revolution? If I'm remembering right, the Maya are sort of hard to get into. You've got to go through one revolution, then a second revolution. This is not a revolution that you would typically see in most games. So, a lot of changes here, but I don't know how impactful that'll be in your normal, especially your 1v1 supremacy games. I don't know that a lot of people are going into the Maya. Maybe I'm wrong. But some interesting changes. Rio Grande Revolution. Guard upgrades remain free, but now take 200% longer to research. Wow. Sierra Madre. So I think before it was just they're free. Now it's... I do kind of like that. It sort of reminds me of the U.S. and their... what is the name of that arsenal? It's like the... It's not the Madisonian Arsenal. I forget the name of the card. The U.S. has a card that makes all of their arsenal techs free, but they're significantly slower to research. And sort of a similar deal with this guard upgrade for the Rio Grande Revolution. Sierra Madre Republic. Maximum amount of possible settlers reduced to... I'm sorry, what? Maximum amount of possible settlers reduced to 24 from 85. 24 from 85. Okay, so what's the logic there? I mean, Sierra Madre, that must be some kind of... again, I'm... Here we go. Let's pull up Sierra Madre. Let's go. Let's see if they will pull up. Okay, we'll go with Mexico. We'll just say Mexico, and I bet we find it that way. Mexico. Alright, let's see if we can find Sierra Madre. Because what would compel the devs to cut the available settlers for a civilization or a revolution civ by... What is that? It's like it's down 66%. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. Rio Grande. Let's go to Rio Grande. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the Rio Grande is kind of an all-in civ. Sets population space to 200. Removes training settlers. Turns all villagers into revolutionaries. Okay. Sets ironclad train limit to 4. Mortars, horse artillery, and heavy cannons are immediately available. Guard upgrades are available for free. Yeah. So Sierra Madre, this is sort of an all-in military revolution. And it makes sense to me, then, that if you were to go for this, you can't get the guard upgrades for free, and the mortars and the horse artillery and the heavy cannons are available. You do all of this, and then you send the, what is it called? There's the settlers. There's what is the name of this card? It lets you train citizens. Now, where is it? I don't see it in here. I might be wrong, or these might be only unique to them. But there's definitely a card in here that lets you retrain. Or maybe it's just this. Ships 1 settler for every 3 revolutionaries lost for this card is set up to 80. So this lets you reboom your economy. Before, you could fight and fight and fight and fight, get this card up to 80-something, and then rebuild your whole economy with 1 card. Now, the max is 24. So you can still, get some kind of eco off of 1 card, and getting 24 villagers out of a card is really big. But it's no longer letting you just sort of totally rebuild your eco after a fight and a revolution, an all-in play like Rio Grande offers. That makes sense, I suppose. Texas Army in the Texas Revolution fixed an issue with the cost increase by setting it to 500 coin. Also reverted the train time increase, so that's a buff there. Okay, Mexico's all over the place. I'm guessing that's kind of a nerf to the Salteador, especially in the early game. I think with Vigilantes, that means that they are probably not... They're probably as strong in later stages of the game. But I'm going to guess that this is overall a nerf to them because of Salteador. They do have a cost reduction on Planet Miramare, but that's a late game thing anyway. Yeah, I think it's a nerf getting to the late game. In a 1v1 supremacy situation, I think that they've been slightly tapped down a bit. The Aesop. Fixed an issue with siege damage not being reduced to 20. Range damage multipliers against light cav increased to 3.25 from 3. Range decreased to 14. But the veteran and guard upgrades now improve range by 2, up from 1. They are clearly very hesitant to nerf the Ottomans. I know that there are some people who just hate the Ottomans, and they're considered just the worst civ, or in the sense that they're so strong, that they're overpowered and they need nerfs. Clearly the devs don't feel that way, that they need to be significantly tapped down. But they do see that the Aesop is a strong unit, and again, kind of like with Salteador earlier, I read something like this. They're even more effective at their correct job against cavalry. I do wonder if this is a buff or a nerf here. Fixed an issue with siege damage not being reduced to 20. It would suggest that it was higher. So that might actually be a nerf, meaning they're not quite as effective at destroying buildings. They are a little bit more effective against their counter, right? They do a great job countering cavalry, light cav in particular here. So that's nice. But then here, the range being decreased in the early game, and then you getting that range back through the veteran and the guard upgrades. And if I'm understanding right, maybe they even get some more range in the late game. This is designed to, again, sort of give a little tap to their early game strength through the Aesop unit. Now, that doesn't do anything for the old classic, the Janissary Rush, the Abus Gunner, but still, I think that is fun for the Aesop unit. Insofar as you would want to add them in, they're not quite as effective in that early game scenario. As a general unit, they're still, good against light cav, obviously. Portuguese Ordnance Riflemen reverted an unintentional improvement to the unit's speed and train time. I'm guessing that's a nerf. There were unintentional improvements, so that's been taken away. So yeah, they're probably not as strong as they were. Team Rum Distillery card has been added and replaces the Rum Distillery cards. The Portuguese, alongside with the Hado Nishani, get the Rum Distillery card as a team card now, which is really cool for team games. Good on them. And remember all the way back at the beginning of this video, I said, oh, this change to The training ships tag is really exciting, and there are some changes here. It does affect a civilization, and that civ is the Portuguese. With this card, naval infantry. It now classifies other ships than galleons as training ships, meaning they receive lower damage from culverins. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'll actually double check, because again, I've got the game pulled up right here. So let me go to the Portuguese, and I believe that is the case because naval infantry allows all ships to train infantry. Sure enough, naval infantry enables Portuguese warships to train infantry. So they all get that tag. They're all receiving reduced damage from culverins, which is pretty cool in those scenarios where you're playing a water map and culverins are threatening your ships. So that's pretty neat. Russians getting a small buff here. 5 Poruchik's card is now being increased to 6 Poruchiks. The Swedes card being buffed as well. March of the Hakapellets now also sends 3 Hakapellets. This was a card that upgraded the Hakapellet. That's the Swedish light cavalry. Some of the old hands are still they're still bothered by the fact once upon a time Hakapellets were actually heavy cavalry. They are light cav now. Just to kind of fit in with all of the other ranged cavalry units, or most of the others anyway. I'm trying to figure out what card is that? That is Age 2. I do want to tell you guys while we're looking at it what that card does. But this was another one of those cards that, it really buffs your army. The army that you've got. It unlocks potential, but it doesn't really give you anything on the field at that moment. If you don't already have Hakapellets on the field, it's not doing anything for you. So, March of the Hakapellets, it increases their movement speed and enables them to be trained in the Commerce Age. Normally, they are a Fortress Age only unit. So, not only do you get that, but now you're getting 3 right out of the gate, making this a much more appealing card. I think it's a really nice buff for the Swedes. Finally, Carbine Cavalry. Their range has been reduced in Age 2, but automatically restored to 14 in Age 3. So again, tapping down some of the range of these units, making the US slightly weaker in Age 2. And I think that's it for the main civs. The only thing we've got left are revolutions. I'm going to scroll down really quickly, see if there's anything that catches my eye. Team Native Weapon Trade, increasing Native Warrior build limits. That's kind of cool. Didn't conscription make them train faster? I like this new one more. Yeah. Chile. Poor Chile. German settlements sends two settler wagons down from 3. Settler wagons take 40 seconds to train, up from 25. And if I'm not mistaken, settler wagons cannot be trained in batches. So yeah, that's 15 seconds per settler wagon. Ouch. Salitrera. Fix the omission of build limits for estates. It's now 10. And lower the coin trickle to 5 coins per second, down from 8 coins per second. Okay. Gran Colombia. 3 iron cards added. All right. Advanced Arsenal added to Indonesia. Okay. Added a pop space cost to War Elephants. Cool. Peru, American allies, fixed an issue with the card not removing the Quechua option within the Caribs Alliance. Manco Inca. Manco Inca is no longer classified as a hero. As far as the tag goes, I don't know how important that is. I think spies do bonus damage against hero units, so that may actually be a buff, if I'm not mistaken. But then it would be a nerf for anything that improves your heroes in combat. So I don't know how big a deal that actually is one way or the other. If that's all it's doing. Yeah. Romania, 8 Cav Archers card added. That's pretty cool. Russian Expeditionary Army sends 9 Counter Dragoons, which are light cav that do a bunch of bonus damage to other light cav. It's pretty nice. And 3 Culverins, artillery that does bonus damage to other artillery. Really nice card. Good for Romania. Fix an issue with several cards not providing their revolutionary bonus effect. And then finally, Revolutionary United States. Bushnell's Continental Sappers cost down. Knox Continental Army cost down. And costs totally removed from Lee's, Morgan's, and Haslett's regiments. Good for them. Finally, there's some campaign changes, and that is that. So we have gone through the pup updates, and I would guess that there aren't going to be a lot of changes. It does say at the top here, these changes are not final. They may change some things between now, the recording of this video, and when the patch actually comes out. But I'm going to guess that they aren't going to change that much. The one thing we will have to keep an eye on, they do not put into the public update preview what sort of what's going on in the future of the game. In the most recent patches, the last few patches that they put out for the game, they have not added in any notes about what's on the horizon, what's coming next, what is the future of Age of Empires 3. They've been pretty mum on that part. And some people in the community have been worried. What does that mean? They're not even saying, well, you can expect more balance changes. And is that a sign that we shouldn't expect more changes? But we have seen, some changes to some of the databases in Steam, and it's very possible they don't announce those notes in the pup. That'll wait for the patch notes itself. I'm really curious to see on this patch. Do they give us some sign that AoE3 is still a priority? I mean, is it on the back burner because Age of Mythology is being worked on and will be probably announced with more details soon? Or is Age of Empires 3 still in the spotlight in some way? I'm curious to see what we'll see there. But guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. This is, again, a new experience for me doing this live. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this. Hope it all went through, and I want you guys to let me know if you enjoyed this sort of live experience. I look forward to the opportunity to stream games and stream more patch notes like this and be able to react with the audience in real time. I'm not seeing any messages on my end here, but I don't know if that's just because maybe my software's not set up. I'll have to go back and check. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much. For now, this is the Iron Kaiser signing out. Have a great one. God bless.